Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm glad y'all came out here for Dick's talk. He's coming straight to us from Newington, Connecticut via Los Angeles. If you would, please silence your radios and silence your phones. Dick is on his 10th trip out here to Quartzfest. His first one was 2011. And we thank you so much for coming out here. Dick is our Southwest Division Director for the ARRL N6A. Dick's our Southwest Division Director for the ARRL, and I hear there's lots of information to give us today.
Thanks, Chris. So a number of topics I'm going to cover today, just roughly sort of the status of the ARRL, happenings with the person we call CEO, what we're going to do to replace him, an important new group. It's not a new group, but it's a group that is going to be very important in the future of ham radio. Southwest Division, management, politics, happenings, homeowners association legislation, the threat to the 3 gigahertz microwave band from 5G internet, our new magazine On the Air, the volunteer monitor program, the website, WinLink, 2.8 kilohertz bandwidth request, technician class license privileges enhancements, the lifelong learning site for ARRL, and the jammer on the West Coast. We may not get to all of these things. In addition, this is a two-way interchange. This is a forum. Anything you guys want to bring up, please do. You'll have an opportunity to present it, not only to me, but there's going to be about 150 of you here that will hear it, and it will get propagated away appropriately. Let's first talk about the ARRL itself. I assume almost all of you are members. The ARRL is the National Organization for Amateur Radio in the United States. It has about 157,000 members. It's essentially the same as it had a year ago. We're down 140 members for the year, but we were up from November, so it's turning around a little. But from the big picture, the number is roughly constant. One thing did change significantly is we now have $4 million more in the bank than we had a year ago. So if you're concerned about the league going out of business, you might not worry about it too much. In fact, compared to, say, 9 or 10 years ago, we have over $20 million more in the bank than we had then. A lot of this is due to the stock market going up, people making bequests as they pass on, but we're not hurting financially. We actually probably need ideas of how to spend the money. The league has, as I said, 157,000 members. There are about 100 of us that you elect to positions to run parts of the league. I'm the director of the Southwestern Division, which is Southern California and Arizona. Here is Tom Abernethy, W3TOM, who is the director of the Atlantic Division, which is basically Pennsylvania, Western New York, Southern New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and District of Columbia. We have the International Vice President, Rod Stafford, W6ROD, in a easy to see at night jacket, and Rod has been past president of the league as well as the director of the Pacific Division, which would be Northern California, Nevada, and Hawaii. We also have here 3 section managers. They're all elected. Arizona, Rick Paquette, W7RAP, who just gave a talk across the street, is here. On my right, Bill K8TE from New Mexico is somewhere out here. No, he's right next to me. No wonder I can't see him.
Just a little guy.
And in the back somewhere is Carl Gardenius, WU6D, who's the Orange section manager. Orange is basically across the river from here, Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and Inyo County in California. So those people are elected to positions by the members essentially directly, although Rod is indirect and that the directors elect him, but he has been an elected, directly elected person. We also have some number of volunteers who are club coordinators and assistant section managers and things like that, maybe around 1,000 of them, and there is a number of them here I see. We won't go into that. Then there's the rest of 100,000 plus members. We also have a paid staff in Newington, Connecticut of slightly less than 100 people that do things like put the magazines out, keep the trains running, organize the section managers, organize the elections, have a headquarters where you can go visit, run an operation where you can ask technical questions or other questions about ham radio and get them answered. And that organization is run by what we've called recently a chief executive officer, a CEO. As I'm sure many of you have read on the internet and other remnants of the blogosphere, maybe we could say, the league did not renew the contract of the CEO who had the job last year, and there's all kinds of speculating about what happened. There are people who say this is a personnel issue, we can't discuss it. I'll discuss it a little. You'll understand the league a little better, at least the board of directors a little better, if you look at the directors as being members of one or two political parties. Now, these aren't official political parties. They're groups of people who maybe a couple years ago I described as the Confidentiality Party and the Transparency Party. And in many cases, you can analyze what's going on by which group supports what. And 2 or 3 years ago, the Confidentiality Party had a clear majority on the board. I'd say it was 11-4. 2 years ago, we had elections, 4 seats changed, so the majority party went from Confidentiality to Transparency Party, and it was 8-7. This year we had another election where 1 more seat changed, and so I'd say the Transparency Party is in the majority now with 9-6. We don't all vote the same way all the time. On different issues, some people may switch over. And the reason that I picked the name Confidentiality Party and Transparency Party had to do with one specific ruling that the Confidentiality Party, or what I called them, made. They passed something called the Code of Conduct for Directors and Officers of the ARRL, and one of the things that I didn't think was correct was they said, I was not able to tell you how I even voted on something unless that was a vote recorded in the minutes of the league. No less was I allowed to tell you why I voted this way or that way. And to me, I thought that was confidentiality on a part of an issue that was unwarranted, that if you're going to make a choice of whether I should be elected director next time, you ought to know how I vote, and that might have a giant impact on what you decide. So that was the delineating difference between confidentiality and transparency. Transparency doesn't mean, you know, I don't have shades on my windows of my house or something like that, and some people have extended it, but it basically has to do with the ability of the directors to communicate to the membership what's going on. This time, the league did not renew the contract of the CEO, or the person running the 100-person organization of paid employees in Newington, Connecticut. In a way, what happened was very simple, and in another way, it's quite complicated. To put it in the simple terms is there was an election. A majority of the directors voted to not renew the contract. But now the complicated part is there's 15 individuals that voted, and I don't know what went through all their heads. I have some idea what went through my head and why I might have voted one way or another. If you listen to the blogs on the internet about people saying this happened or that happened, some of them may have some element of truth to them. Some of them are overt speculation. I mean, one of them was he was still involved with his robot company in Japan. Well, I don't know to what extent that was true, and that wasn't something that was on my mind when I made my decision. Others have made the speculation that, well, he wasn't, quote, a real ham, whatever that means, and I'm not sure that was on my mind to the extent that it would sway the vote one way or another. Also, the vote was not unanimous. It was, I think the numbers are going to be reported in the minutes, which have not come out yet, but some directors wanted to renew, others didn't. So that's the story. Regarding other speculation about there was something evil going on, let me say very simply, Howard was a decent person, an intelligent person, a well-meaning person who did good. Maybe what I can say is a majority of the directors thought that somebody else might do the job better. That's about the story. And there's speculation on the internet about, well, this is, CEOs. CEOs just bought from one job to another. There's no problem. Howard is able to retire. I don't know his personal financial situation, but my suspicion is nobody here needs to worry about him. Even without whatever he gets from his robot company in Japan, he's doing extremely well, and he can retire. He took the job at ARRL as sort of a retirement job to give back to a community of hams that he got a start in his career from. It's not that he needed a job or that he's going to bop off to some other CEO job. Does anyone have any particular comments or questions on the decision of the board? Okay, we'll move on to what's the next step.
Was he replaced?
He has not been replaced yet, and that's what we're going to talk about now, what's going on to do that. The board voted for a committee to find a new CEO, and the board brought back Barry Shelley, N1VXY, who had a long career at the league. He was the chief financial officer. Before that, he was called the business manager. Then when NY2RF departed, Barry took over for a year and a half. Barry, although he has a call sign, I wouldn't say is an active on-the-air ham. Barry did a fine job of keeping the trains running for a year and a half or so, and the board voted to bring him back. Barry had moved from Connecticut to South Carolina, so the board had to make some arrangement for him to come back and possibly visit his family now and then. And that's happening now. And what I want to talk about to you and actually ask from input for you is, what is the right way to do this job? One of them would be to make some comment on what happened last time we did a CEO search. And I believe this is essentially in the minutes of the board meeting so that you can verify it that way. We had a search committee. They came back with, here's the answer. Here's the jack in the box, push the button, out comes the guy. And if you're a board member and you ask a couple of questions, well, who are the other main contenders for the job that you didn't pick? What's the answer? We're not telling you. Number two question is, well, what were the attributes that made you select this guy over some of the others? The answer, we're not telling you. You gave us the job of finding a guy. Here's your guy. And so some of us weren't particularly pleased with that approach. And some of us knew other people that had applied and wondered why some of them might have not been given the job. The vote to select Howard as CEO was not unanimous. It was reasonably close. So what we'd like to do now, at least I would like to see happen, is that we have a CEO picked that is more uniformly liked by the board. Whatever his attributes are, they're agreed to as important. Make no doubt about it, Howard Mickle had very good attributes. It's just some of the things that some people thought were important, others thought other aspects of a candidate's background were more important than that. So that's where we're going now, and I guess I'll ask a question to the group. Is it important that the board go out and have what I'll call a formal CEO search process where we ask for people to submit resumes, we evaluate everybody, and we pick somebody, and in the meantime we have an interim CEO who kind of keeps the ball going? Or if the board knew somebody that they actually wanted, would it be appropriate for the board to just put him in the office? And you might view the second possibility as something similar to if you were running a baseball team and you needed a new second baseman or center fielder. Do you put an ad in the New York Times? No, you know who the people who can play that position well are, and you look around at them and you recruit one of them. And I kind of perceive the job as running the ARRL staff operation as essentially that. You need to know how the ARRL works. You need to know what ham radio is all about. This group has members of different aspects of ham radio that we'll never talk to on the air, but we all have some kind of overall interest in it. One of the things people say one of the requirements is you have to be a real ham. I'm not positive what that is, but others have said something, phrased it a little different, and their description of the attribute that they'd like is the person ought to have a passion for ham radio. It shouldn't be at 5 o'clock he goes home and does something else, period. He ought to be on the air. He ought to make a new grid dip meter or whatever he does. He ought to be interested in ham radio beyond that of just a job. So I'd just be interested, does anyone have any comment on that kind of issue? Or maybe I'll just ask for a show of hands as to one of two options. Is it best that we do this formal search with requests for applications, or is it okay if we just picked a guy that we thought was correct because you guys elected us to be the directors and run the league and it was up to our judgment? So, and then, some of you aren't going to have a decision, but let's ask the first thing. Is it important that we have this formal search process? Those that are in favor? And we have about 30. And how many think it's okay if the board picks somebody that they knew? And it's probably slightly more. It's probably more like 40. So it's not 100 to 0. It's a split vote. And excuse me? Okay, the comment was you're going to get the same guy either way. The difference might be that you got him 6 months earlier. So, any more comment on CEO searches? And one other comment I will add is the league changed its Washington area counsel, the lawyer who represents us to the FCC, And we didn't do a search on that. We just knew a guy who knows that world. He used to work for the FCC. He worked at the top of the FCC with the commissioners, not the present group of them, but he knows how the operation works, and he's in there doing a good job. And we didn't go for a search. We have two comments here. First, Virgil in the front.
I voted for the first option because it doesn't need to be a long, drawn-out, formal process, but I think there should be at least a call for applicants.
Okay, the comment was he didn't think it should be a long, drawn-out process, but he thought there should be a search for candidates. And the comment behind him.
How about our hands of no opinion?
I thought there's about 140 or 50 of you, and about 70 of you voted, so I'll just subtract out and say 80 of you don't care. Is that fair? And the process now, as I look at it, could take 6 months. If I were doing it, it would take 6 weeks, but there's a more formal group that's going to do a more thorough combing of the background, I guess, and it may take that. I'm hopeful that they'll get it done much shorter. We have a comment in the back. Okay, that is a sort of a summation of what other people have said. He said if you're a part of the Transparency Party, it would be more appropriate to have a thorough search instead of putting in somebody that you consider your buddy. The person I want, I wouldn't consider my buddy. I kind of knew him a little bit, but it was because I evaluated his background and what he has done. I might think he's appropriate for that job. We had another comment in the back. Well, and his comment was that if you make a search based on people you know, you might exclude qualified candidates, and the appropriate person might be a she instead of a he. And let me assure you that one of the candidates that was considered quite highly last time was a she. So I believe, and the past president of the ARRL has been a woman, so we appreciate women and they have a role to play, at least in my mind. Well, a comment here? Yes, I'll answer that by saying we made that decision and we voted to form a search committee. So the question was, can you do that? The answer is yes, we already did it. Okay, let's go on to something else. Let's go on to, the ARRL ain't the only player in town anymore.